with that, Buddy Weber, you get to go first, buddy.
Good afternoon. Excuse me, my name is Buddy Weber. I do speak softly, so I'm going to try to lean into the mic. If you can't hear me, put your hands up. What you're about to hear today is what I call the Cliff Notes version of the Cliff Notes version of the case against Morgan Bettinger. And for anybody that chooses to do so, Morgan's sitting right over there, and you can go introduce yourself afterwards. This is a case study in cancel culture. I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a three-time Who, so to speak. I graduated from here in 1968 as an undergraduate, came back in 1993 as a commanding officer of the ROTC unit, professor of naval science. I taught here for 2 years. Then I retired, went to law school, graduated in 98, and I've been practicing law here in Charlottesville ever since, primarily doing, as a sole practitioner, doing criminal defense. I've had 2 full careers now, 27 years in the Navy and 24 plus going on as an attorney. I mentioned cancel culture. As a lawyer, we live and die by our definitions, and everybody thinks they know what cancel culture is. This definition came right out of an article about 5 days ago written by Fire and published on the Daily Beast, and I think it actually captures, accurately captures what we're about and why cancel culture is important to talk about here at UVA. Campaigns to get people fired, disinvited, deplatformed, or otherwise punished for speech that is or would be protected by First Amendment standards. So that is consistent with one of our 4 pillars of protecting free speech. This case study involves 2 people. It's an encounter between Morgan Bettinger and another student by the name of Ziana Bryant. Morgan was a rising 4th-year student. She's the daughter of a career police officer. Bryant was a rising 2nd-year student and a local political activist, well known in the city of Charlottesville. Briefly, this was an encounter that occurred between these 2. Morgan had been working all day. She had a 12-hour shift, 8 hours down south of here, and then the last few hours in downtown Charlottesville as a nanny. She was about 7:30 at night. She's trying to drive home. Brian had organized a defund the police rally that basically blocked her view. So when Morgan came out of her work, she turned left onto High Street and found the street blocked. And this is what she saw as she's approaching the street. She's trying to get to the stoplight well down the road there just to turn home to turn left and go home. She couldn't do that. She thought she might turn left on 4th Street, but she gets up there and finds out that that's blocked by civilian cars, and there are absolutely no police anywhere to be found. She stops, she gets out, she talks to the truck driver for a little bit. The engine's running, so they have to talk in elevated voice. They talk to each other for a while. The truck driver actually initiated a conversation, asked her if she was all right. Casual conversation about why are you here? I hope you're getting paid well, yada, yada, yada. And she ends up saying, well, it's a good thing that you're here, otherwise these people could become speed bumps. That's the genesis. So after she talks to him, she walks around the truck, goes over there, takes a picture of the rally. As you can see, there's a Care Not Cops, there's a Black Women Matter, there's a Defund the Police sign there. They're all blocking the roadway. The entire protest here, by the way, was fundamentally illegal. It had never been approved to block the roadway. There was no notice to the public. Nobody knew that this road was going to be blocked, so it was completely unknown. But anyway, unbeknownst to Morgan, somebody was standing behind her and a couple protesters, and they heard the word speed bumps, and they started spreading the word around, hey, this woman just said that the protesters would make good speed bumps. So they began to turn their attention to her, and she gets on the phone to her mother, telling her that she's going to be late. She's got to try to figure a way to get out of there. But meanwhile, as she gets back into her car, they're taking pictures of her, they're videotaping her, they're taunting her, they're threatening her. One woman's beating on the car. Ultimately, she has to get in her car, close the doors, windows up, lock the doors, gets on the phone to the police, and she's trying to back down High Street so that she can back out and go the other way. Meanwhile, they're threatening her. She's on the phone with the police, takes about 6 minutes for the police to get there. They finally do. As soon as the police arrive, all the protesters disperse from around her car. She's able to turn around and proceed the other way and head home. She ends up stopping, talking to the police a few blocks down, telling them what happened, and then she just goes home and doesn't think much more of it. Well, what happened is, just in a slide here. These are not in order, I'm sorry. Let me tell you what initially happened is, I don't know why these slides are not in order, but Bryant immediately gets on social media and creates an entirely false narrative of what's going on. She said that Morgan had to travel down multiple one-way streets. She drove through 2 police barricades and tried to drive around the dump truck in order to threaten the protesters. And then she said that the protesters would make good speed bumps. So this explodes on social media. Morgan gets a call about 1 o'clock in the morning from a friend saying, "Hey, are you all right?" She says, "Yeah, I'm fine, what's going on?" She finds out that she's getting death threats on social media. What I can tell you is that if it had ended there, it would have been okay. But Bryant goes further and she issues what's called a call to action, which is the standard phrase that they use in the Black Lives Matter movement. Call the deans, demand that UVA take action against this person who threatened our protest and disrupted us. Demand that they stop graduating racist. So in other words, Morgan's a racist just because she was trying to get home. Dean of Students is absolutely inundated with phone calls. I don't know where my slides are.
This one.
Actually, okay. I'm going to ad lib this a little bit here. All right. So what happens is that these students gets inundated with these text messages, phone calls, angry emails, and he sends out a tweet says we're investigating and we'll be taking it all very seriously. There are 7 different people here involved with the university that are ultimately become involved in this case. I'm going to go through each one, not necessarily in chronological order, but I'll tell you what their role was. Dean of Students, first he gets all this stuff and he's trying to investigate. Morgan is passing him information. She provides a written statement. We're feeding him with videotapes that we have, with pictures, witness statements, trying to just say, hey, look, this is what happened. He convenes what's called the threat assessment team, which includes the chief of police at UVA. He's actually the former chief of police at Charlottesville. Charlottesville had already been informed of the incident because Morgan had called the police that night after she got the death threats. So all these people are investigating the thing, and at the end of the day, after about, I guess, 30 days of investigation, they realize that Morgan is no threat to the university. She's not going to get interimly suspended, but the Dean of Students decided, well, we need to refer this to the University Judiciary Committee on the sole issue of whether her use of the word speed bumps constituted a true threat. Reason that's important? If it's a true threat within the meaning of the constitutional law, it's not protected by the Constitution. Any other phrase, whether it's political hyperbole or not, is completely protected. So the Office of the Equal Opportunity and Civil Rights gets involved in this because Bryant then files a discrimination and harassment complaint against Morgan on the basis of what she said. They proceed to an investigation which takes well over a year. I'll go into them a little bit later because ultimately they did the right thing for maybe all the wrong reasons. But immediately, though, the University Judiciary Committee, Bryant also files a complaint with the University Judiciary Committee alleging a violation of standard of conduct 2, which is intentionally or recklessly threatening the health or safety of others. So now the University Judiciary Committee is setting this thing up for a trial. You got a complaint by Morgan. You got this parallel complaint coming in from the Dean of Students, who has now instructing them that he thinks it's a legitimate complaint too. And the one thing I forgot to mention is that when the Dean of Students indicated to us that he was filing the complaint, he did his own little legal analysis of why he thought it could be construed as a true threat. I sent an email back to him and said, we fundamentally disagree with you. I think your legal analysis is all wrong. And he says, okay, take that up with the university council. I did, spent the next month or so trying to work with the university council to make sure we had a good legal instruction to the panel. But his first words to me were, I agree with you. So he agreed with my analysis, not the Dean of Students, but by then that information had already been sent to the University Judiciary Committee. So the other issue was with the University Council, when the EOCR got involved, I first objected to them even doing an investigation because it was out of their jurisdiction. I pulled up all their own jurisdictional procedures and everything, and I said, here's why you don't have jurisdiction. It's not on the university, it's occurred in downtown Charlottesville, it involves speech. You can't touch this. University Council wrote back and said, well, because it could have an effect on the university, we're gonna allow them to go forward. Bottom line is that the Judiciary Committee, the 5 students, this trial occurs like maybe a month and a half later, late September, they convict her. And they don't necessarily say it's a true threat, they just say that she should have known more about the history of Charlottesville and what she did was shameful. She appeals that to the Judicial Review Board, and the Judicial Review Board can only handle what are called procedural errors. They can't handle any substantive complaint that they got the constitutional issue wrong. So we managed to shoehorn in a way to do that, which included the erroneous legal instruction, but ultimately I said, look, no reasonable person could consider these words to be a true threat. University, the Judicial Review Board, which was headed up by a law professor, by the way, he said, well, we can't go there. That's a sufficiency of the evidence argument. I'm sorry, but the students have the final say on that. We can't touch that. Finally, the Judicial Review Board comes out 1 month before graduation. She's got to do all of her sanctions if she wants to graduate. So she's studying for her finals. She's putting together the final draft of a 60-page thesis that she's got to have done. She has 50 hours of community service, 3 hours of remedial education on police community relations. She's got to draft a letter of apology to Brian. She gets all that done, and then 2 days before graduation, we still haven't heard anything from EOCR, and we finally called them and said, look, we just need to know, are you going to let her graduate or not? And they came back and said, we're not finished with the report yet, but we're going to let her graduate. So she graduates. 1 month later, we get a report from the EOCR, completely exonerates Morgan, and specifically says the words you spoke to the truck driver were not inherently threatening on their face. Totally inconsistent results within UVA. On the basis of those inconsistent results, I drafted a letter to President Ryan and said, you got inconsistent results, EOCR got it right. The Judicial Review Board, the Judicial Review Board didn't touch it, the UJC got it all wrong, it's a constitutional issue. You don't have the authority to punish her for this. You need to expunge her record. All we asked them to do, just expunge the record. That ultimately got published online. That letter got published and picked up by Fire. Fire asked me if we wanted them to send a letter to Ryan. They did as well. They sent another letter with even more legal analysis and said, you can't punish her for this. It's a violation of the Constitution. He wrote back to me and to Fire and basically said, no, he's not going to take any action. So the key takeaways that I got from all of this, one is that UVA punished Morgan for speech that was protected by the Constitution. That is a direct indication of what cancel culture is all about, right from the definition that I gave you earlier. University has absolutely no decent procedures for resolving these kind of constitutional issues. And they certainly, they don't provide for any substantive review when students get it wrong. And that's just contrary to everything I know about the law. I mentioned EOCR because EOCR got the right answer. But I will tell you, a year long with EOCR was an oppressive process. They were biased, they were probing areas that were totally irrelevant, and without me there pushing them, providing them with information, providing them with legal arguments, I'm not convinced they would have gotten that result. And I don't wish any EOCR process on any student, or even a professor. Anybody that has to go through that process is going in blind. Get a lawyer, get somebody to work with you. And finally, takeaway was just the abdication of responsibility. I thought that the Dean of Students could have stopped this matter in its tracks once he got the results from the threat assessment team. University Council on 2 issues, they failed with legal advice to UJC and the jurisdictional issue of EOCR. And finally, President Ryan. The Board of Visitors Manual says President Ryan is ultimately responsible for student discipline. Responsible. He can delegate the authority to do things to anybody he wants. The principle of leadership is that you can always delegate authority, but you can never delegate responsibility. He had the responsibility and the authority to expunge her record, and he didn't. The article from Fire on cancel culture said there's been an uptick in these problems since about 2014. In my view, the problem started here in Charlottesville in August of 2017. We all know what happened there. The alt-right rally came down here, broke got killed by a car. 2 police officers got killed in a plane crash. But one of the, I think what happened here is that in August of 2017, all the politics changed everywhere, including at the university. Here is a quote by President Ryan himself. It was published in the paper in 2021, and he was talking about the changes that he's brought about as a result of the events of August 2017. He said the underlying ideology underlying the whole march was that some people are worthy and some people aren't. It was targeted at people of color and Jewish people. I think the only way to combat that is to double down on the fact that that is not what UVA is about. So it appears to me that he's trying to prove that we're not something that I think most of us in here would agree that we never have been. So I think that's the genesis of the kind of cultural changes that we've seen here at UVA. So why am I here? Got my undergraduate experience. Everybody else has their own experience. Bert talked about the honor code. We walked away with that kind of etched in our own hearts. I've been a 29-year resident of Charlottesville. I've seen all this stuff. I was here during the events of 2017. The false narratives that have come out of that are very much akin to the hands up, don't shoot memes that got out of Ferguson. But the kicker for me was Morgan Bettinger representing her through this process. And at the time I did that, I got into contact with several other students that were encountering difficulties with the university. Nick Cabrera was one of them. Victoria Spiato was a former president of the AV. She was involved in it, and I came to the conclusion that these kids need somebody to have their back. That's the bottom line for me. Over the week, I had shared. I'm on a little text message group with a group of people. We share these editorials and things like that with each other just to have a discussion going about the politics. And I shared that article from Fire about cancel culture, and I said my experience with Morgan tells me that nobody's going to convince me that it's not a real phenomenon and that it's getting worse. And one of my friends from banking says, well, why is Ryan doing this? I mean, it seems to me he can get out of this fairly easily. All you got to do is expunge the record. He can do it without losing any face. And I said, look, I'm not going to get into psychoanalyzing why Ryan. It's like, well, he just didn't do it, so we have to go from there. And he wrote back. I think I have this slide. He wrote back. He said, well, Morgan must mean nothing to Ryan. put expunging the record means everything to her. And I wrote back and said, bingo, that's exactly right. And I recognized the quote right away. It came right out of Antigone, and we had seen that play together once before. So I thank you for your time. Morgan, by the way, she finished all of her sanctions. She got an A at her thesis, and she's now a graduate. Long night at UVA.